we're often told, like, North Korea is incredibly repressive. It impedes its citizens from, doing basic shit, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, North Korea is like a really fucked up country. Make no mistake. I'm not going to pretend that it's like actually a secret utopia, as a lot of really fucking weird American 12-year-olds like to do on social media. However, a lot of the problems that North Koreans face are not imposed upon them by their government. It's imposed upon them by outside forces, namely the United States of America and the Western Bloc, but also other countries are complicit in this. In 2017, there was this extensive sanctions package imposed on North Korea, which put incredibly draconic restrictions on North Korean citizens who live abroad. And it's insane how far this went. This was ostensibly in retaliation against them for like having a nuclear program, which they should be allowed to have a nuclear program. What the fuck? Why do all of these countries that already have nukes get to tell other countries they don't get to have a nuclear program? What a joke. So the sanctions were passed through a vote by the UN Security Council in 2017. Now, the Security Council is an undemocratic coalition of like countries, where certain countries get vetoes of whatever Security Council vote there is. It's like a set in stone block of countries that get to vote amongst themselves to impose things on every other country in the world through the UN, basically. Among them, there's the US, China, France, Russia, etc. And as a part of this sanctions package, there was a broad, massive economic sanction on North Korea that is still in effect today. It's like the narrative surrounding this is incoherent. It's like North Korea is so poor, its citizens are so oppressed, they're so materially deprived. Let's do fucking everything possible to make that worse. Let's do everything possible to make the situation immeasurably worse by basically banning them from doing anything ever on the international market, generating any sort of income, any sort of trade, any sort of economic activity that could possibly benefit their people. But the main reason I wanted to talk about this was for the most draconic of all of these restrictions. And that is that it puts restrictions on the rights of individual North Korean citizens. That's right. Individual North Korean citizens are literally all sanctioned by this. If you're a North Korean and you leave North Korea to live abroad, you have sanctions imposed upon you, de facto, that make it impossible for you to live. Imposed upon these people by the very countries that claim to be like on the side of their people, by the way. This is from UN Security Council Resolution 2375 from 2017. It says, this resolution introduced a ban on member states from providing work authorizations for DPRK nationals, other than those for which written contracts have been finalized prior to the adoption of this resolution. So if you are a North Korean living abroad, you are literally prohibited by the UN from working. Your individual rights are stripped away and you are not allowed to work. Even if you're a North Korean who literally escapes the country by running across the border and stuff illegally or whatever, you're still technically not allowed to work according to the UN. According to UN sanctions. The only way that you can be allowed to work is if you renounce your citizenship. And this has had real-world effects. 5 years ago, there was this North Korean footballer, Han Kwang-song, and he was good enough to go and play in Italy. But after the 2017 sanctions, he was no longer allowed to play in Italy because he was a North Korean. And he was a North Korean who technically, because Italy is a UN member state, was not allowed to be given work authorization. And they made up a ton of excuses for why they were excluding him, like, oh, he's sending money back to the North Korean government, which is the funniest thing ever, by the way. North Korea, poor as it is, it's a country of 25 million people, 26 million people. The idea that the North Korean government is so desperate for money that they have to, make an athlete pay them is absurd. Whatever he was earning as his salary, it was nothing for them. So they tried to say, oh, but what if he's sending his money to the government? That's why they're not letting him play. They never actually proved that anything like that was happening to him. And they tried to frame it as if the reason why he was no longer allowed to play was because he was clandestinely sending money back to the North Korean government. When the real reason was he was literally banned, his individual rights stripped away by the United Nations because he's North Korean. Because of this, he had to go back to North Korea and play there. And obviously, the North Korean leagues are way worse. So this guy who was good enough to play in the top tier of the Italian league, now he has to play in for a relatively shitty North Korean team until the end of time because he's literally legally prevented from doing so. His life has basically been ruined, his potential stunted by draconic restrictions on individual North Korean citizens and the stripping away of their individual rights by the liberal institution, the UN, ironically supposedly dedicated to the individual rights of human beings. Restrictions put on him for his nationality. And these are the same people who tell you that you cannot put restrictions on individual Israelis in the name of fighting Israeli colonialism because that would be discriminatory, that would be against the UN Charter. You know, no collective responsibility. North Korea does nothing even fucking half as bad, even like a smidgen, a bazillionth as bad as Israel does. It's developing nuclear weapons for defensive purposes because it's legitimately under threat by actual nuclear armed powers. And its nationals get the sort of restrictions put on them that it would actually make sense to put on Israeli nationals. Remember this, whenever anyone who is like a generic, like Western foreign policy aligned person is like, no, it's wrong to put restrictions on Israel and on Israelis because it violates their individual rights, collective punishment. Point out this to them and how they've never said fucking anything about it, and if anything, they probably support it. It's ludicrous.